We have breaking news as the New York Rangers have officially traded Kaapo Kakko to the Seattle Kraken for a very interesting defenseman. We're going to break that down as well as Chris Drury. It looks like he will not be going anywhere, and it has Rangers fans fired up. We're going to break it down in this episode of Rangers Digest. But before we do that, about 70% of you who watch these videos are not actually subscribed to the channel. So if you want to do yourself a favor, hit that subscribe button. It's free, and you get to stay up to date with everything New York Rangers. And obviously, for those of you who have been subscribed, thank you so much for following me along on this very interesting ride of a season. And clearly, I'm not at my usual recording spot, but, we're doing this on the fly, and Kaapo Kakko has just been traded. So let's get into it. Kaapo Kakko officially has been traded to the Seattle Kraken. So the era, the second overall pick, the former second overall pick era has come to an end in New York. And we'll take a look at the trade here. It is the New York Rangers receive Will Borgen, defenseman from the Seattle Kraken, and a 2025 third round pick, a 2025 sixth round pick, and in return, the Seattle Kraken get Kaapo Kakko. Now, this is very interesting. This is a very interesting player from the Seattle Kraken. This is a guy who is 27 years old. He's obviously a right shot defenseman and a big body. This is a guy that a lot of teams were interested in. This was a guy that was at the top of the list for trade targets heading into the trade deadline. So very interesting. He isn't on an expiring contract, and I think it's very interesting. This is a move, and I do believe that the Rangers had their eye on this player and would use this player. I think that there's good use of this player. But I think that there is also something to be said about contending teams. And if this team is not in a spot to make the playoffs come, the trade deadline, this is a player that they could then flip to another team for assets. So I think this is pretty good management in that way, in the player that they got back by Chris Drury. But the fact that Kaapo Kakko, a former second overall pick and a player that I think that they mismanaged a little bit, is going the other way is a little bit sad. But to get into it, this is from Molly Walker. Borgen is someone that they have targeted and liked for some time. So clearly, to me, it looks like this is a player that they're going to hang on to. I don't think that I don't think they have any plans to trade him at this point in time. I think that Chris Drury still believes that this team can make the playoffs, even though it seems like this team has quit on the GM, not necessarily the coach, except for one player, and that was Kaapo Kakko over the last couple of days, obviously, with his comments, which we'll get into in this video as well. But you know what? For Kaapo Kakko, I thought he had great use. I thought he was a great player 5-on-5. And not a great player, but a good player. He had use, and I thought that he could be a playoff performer. But again, change of scenery, is something that he probably needed. And for the New York Rangers, maybe to move on from this player. But that is a tough decision, and that is a tough trade for the New York Rangers. I'm not a huge fan of this trade, especially because, again, if you're not going to make the playoffs, I think you got to flip this player and Will Borgen at the trade deadline. So this all really depends on where the New York Rangers are come this spring and come the trade deadline. And this is from Joe Fortiano. This feels like a win now move. Borgen is 28. He's 27. He's going into his 28-year-old season. At best, this is a third pairing guy and is a UFA at the end of the year. The Rangers lose one of their best defensive players on the organization, on an organization that can't play defense. Kaapo Kakko, wanted out, but this return, as I expected, sucks. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of this return. I do think that, there is some use. Credit where credit is due to Chris Drury, where, there's some flexibility where he can flip this player at the trade deadline if the team looks like they're not going to be making the playoffs. But again, that is a tough return for a former second overall pick and a guy who's really good defensively. His numbers 5-on-5 were very good this year. And this is from Kevin Weeks as well, just to clear the air. Per sources, I'm told that the Kaapo Kakko trade was in no way connected to his comments yesterday. The New York Rangers like and respect him. He's a pending RFA and 1 year away from UFA. This move is best for both sides. They wish him nothing but the best. And myself personally, to Kaapo Kakko, I wish him nothing but the best. I think he's going to be a great player in the NHL, and he's probably going to put up good numbers with Seattle. And you know what? He's not the flashiest player, but he does the fine details of the game a little bit better than a lot of the New York Rangers are doing right now. And it took him till, almost mid-November to actually get scored on while on the ice this season. And in a season that's going the way that it is, I think there's something to be said about that. So he's been a really good player so far this season, in my eyes at least. And I know a lot of players, or a lot of people and fans, are going to miss this player. It's a tough trade. I think a change of scenery was probably best for both sides at the end of the day. But again, you would like a little bit more out of a trade in this scenario. And I feel like the Rangers were kind of pinned into a corner because they have been playing very poorly, and that's tough. And his comments the last couple of days, I totally agree with him. Like, I cannot believe that other guys are not getting scratched over him. Like, we knew what this was. I think we can all agree that they held him out the other night because I think there was a potential trade on the table. It probably fell through. He ended up playing in Nashville, and then there was a trade that got picked up today with the Seattle Kraken. He went on to say, I was surprised. Yeah, I know you got to do something as a coach when you're losing games, but I think it's just easy to pick a young guy and boot him out. That's how I feel, to be honest. And obviously he had some other comments the last couple of days about, I'm not the worst player. There should be other guys getting scratched. A lot of people are not happy about, New York Rangers calling each other out. I think that can be a good thing at times. I think good teams and good players hold each other accountable. And I think that at times you have to do that. So I was actually a big fan of his comments. I think that he's telling the truth. I think that, sometimes when you're in spots like this as an organization, you have to tell the truth, and you have to be, you have to take things at face value. That's exactly what he was doing. So, I do agree with him there. It's a tough trade. It is a tough trade at the end of the day, but I think that unfortunately he's going to do well in Seattle, but in terms of the player, I'll break down a little bit in a few minutes, Will Borgen again, but Emily Kaplan did say that James Dolan is in support of Drury's decisions, memo, trades, and Kakko getting obviously trade interest from different teams that ended up getting traded today. So it doesn't seem like Chris Drury is going to go anywhere, because I brought it up in a video the last couple of days. I was saying, at this point, you either start trading everyone, or, which is difficult to do with the salary cap structure and the structure of the team and their contracts. So that's difficult to do, or you get rid of Chris Drury. And I don't think Chris Drury is going anywhere. I'm not defending him. He's made some sloppy moves over the last couple years, really, since he's been hired. He's made a couple good moves and a couple cap flexible moves, like Ryan Lindgren, like this trade, for example. In a way, it's not the best return, but the fact that Will Borgen has been eyed by other teams, and now that you own him, if you don't make the playoffs, you can then flip him. So I think that is good in a way. It's a tough return though for Kaapo Kakko. So it doesn't seem like Chris Drury is going anywhere for the New York Rangers. And again, Will Borgen has been a New York Ranger target for some time. So acquiring the pending UFA plus 2 draft picks, you can't get lost in that either. I mean, they got a 3rd round pick out of this, but again, he was a former 2nd overall pick. That is hard. But the draft picks gives them more flexibility while reshaping the roster. And that's the thing. He's going to come in. I mean, I think we can all agree that the Rangers needed to upgrade the defense a little bit too in the midst of all this. They did that to a degree with this, and then they can flip him if need be, and they get some draft picks out of it. But again, it's Kaapo Kakko. He was putting up some good numbers, I thought, 5-on-5 so far this season. But let me know in the comments what you think of the Kaapo Kakko trade. Not entirely a fan of it. I do like that, the trade. We knew that the return probably wasn't going to be something spectacular at this point. He hasn't really lived up to expectations. The Rangers haven't really developed him properly and have mismanaged him to a degree. So that the return wasn't going to be great, but I'm glad that the return is at least flexible for the Rangers, that they can do something with if things continue to slide as they are. So let me know what you think in the comments, and if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.